The neoliberal university is empty, cold, and uncaring. Where do we go to find energy, warmth, and care? Where can we carve out spaces for us to be in relation? Where can we build politics, consciousness, love, and friendship? Or, if we do not know where we are, how can we know that we exist?
The idea for Reading Feminism started in 2020 when Lily and I were studying honours together in gender studies at Adelaide University. We talked quite a bit throughout the year about starting a reading group.
Reading Feminism was born from the generative debris of a COVID-touched world. The university was siloed, silent, and ghostly. Many of us felt alone. We also felt almost unbearably close. We couldn't move. We were stuck, and so we decided to stick.
We started planning in earnest once we'd submitted our thesis, and I still remember at the beginning of 2021 sitting down planning the reading list, and it felt a little bit like having a mast to hold on to in the storm that was the chaos of a pandemic era and an unknown and uncertain political future.
Following Audre Lorde's observation in her essay, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house, that without community there is no liberation. We decided to start a reading group in 2021. This reading group was established as a site to explore histories of feminist knowledge and practice, and in so doing, offer a feminist space to explore our own present conditions. We meet at least monthly to talk about feminist writing, particularly feminist work that has been forgotten, misremembered, or ignored. Every month, we read a feminist text from across time. Sometimes, these texts are obscure, sometimes canonical, sometimes old, sometimes new, but always concerned with the liberatory politics of feminism. Our feminist readings locate ourselves in a broader, shared feminist consciousness while finding ourselves in an imagined community with other reading groups around the world. One of those groups is the Black Feminist Killjoys, or BFK, of the Wits University and Rhodes University Fine Art Department, created by women of color for women of color, locating a space and place to meaningfully engage with theoretical texts, negotiating the confines of the neoliberal university, where the formulation of scholarly identities and the reading, writing, and critical thinking skills associated with them are left for the individuals to formulate on their own and by themselves. The BFK reading groups argues for the need of creating holistic communities where academic citizenry are captured in conjunction with their lived experiences. Along these lines, we believe that there is an ethical imperative to sit down and spend time reading, thinking, and speaking of feminisms that risk being ignored and lost. We believe it is a feminist responsibility to create space to be both affected and effected by feminisms across time and with each other. We spend time with underread, underthought, and marginalized feminist voices. These meetings are grounded in a desire not to denigrate or critique the works we read, but to learn from them, to find productive, useful, and radical moments. As Maria Puig de la Bella Casa and Sarah Bragg put it, we would rather be better with, because of, than better than those who came before us.
Sarah Ahmed was our first author, and she was also once a student who heard and listened and spoke in the same spaces we pass through every day. We feel the hauntings of Sarah Ahmed as we move through our campus. We feel the hauntings of Sarah Ahmed as we meet to talk about feminism. Sarah Ahmed describes feminism as a politics of getting closer to others that will enable the distance and differences between us to move the political terrain in which it is possible to speak and hear. We wanted to get closer, to speak and hear more expansively, and to cling to feminism and each other in order to survive.
And just as we read to honor and remember the feminist authors who come before us, succeed us, and exceed us, our feminist readings become part of what Sarah Ahmed names our feminist toolkit. We learn from our readings and our meetings how to live more informed feminist lives.
Sometimes reading feminism to me feels like holding a ball of yarn while you're reading. And every time you see an author that you recognize or a path that you're inspired to follow, you take your ball of yarn and you weave it into one more aspect of this citational web of feminist voices. And then you bring this citational web with you and you share it with other people. You run your fingers along the threads together, you pull together threads, you pick apart threads, and sometimes you spend a lot of time investigating and sitting with the knots that inevitably come and flow from this as well.
Reading Feminism borrows from the consciousness-raising groups that precede us. We are non-hierarchical, vulnerable, safe, and invested in the work of finding the political in the personal and the personal in the political. We talk about our lives and we share feminist survival secrets. We also do the work of doing and undoing feminist consciousness, of asking what our shared feminist consciousness should and should not look like, and how we might make feminism a survival device for more kinds of bodies.
Reading Feminism is a collective which aspires to diversity in our membership, in our reading material, but also in our reading practice. Among our members, there are individuals with a range of disabilities, chronic illnesses and mental health conditions, and many neurodiverse body minds. It is important to us that we make our group inclusive of different learning styles, and for that reason, we frequently discuss reading practice. Discussions of reading practice, when brought together, become a menu from which we can select what works for us on any given day, at any given context, in any given mood or state of being. We are constantly learning from each other and trying out new ways of absorbing content. One of these ways of reading is to read around the text. Reading around the text has proven more accessible than reading the text itself for many of our members. Reading around the text allows for potential contact points with the material to proliferate and reduces the potential barriers to participation in our meetings. In any traditional educational contexts, reading around the text is considered a pre-reading strategy, an entry into a typical reading of a text. Each month for Reading Feminism, we share related material, which may tangentially be connected to the main text or to the main text author, or tangentially connected to the theme or topic which the text covers. We share material in different forms to maximize the opportunity that one form will suit some of our members. This can be, but is not limited to, a YouTube video of an interview, a movie based on a book, a documentary movie, a podcast interview with the author, a podcast biography of the author, research and theory inspired by the author or the text, a play based on the text read as a screenplay, listened to as a radio play, or recorded stage performance, or other works by the same author. In this way, we've expanded what we understand disability accessibility to be, beyond the mode of text consumption. This practice of reading around a text allows us to deepen and broaden our discussion at meetings, as well as allows our members to attend without feeling as though they don't have anything to contribute to discussion if they haven't read the main text. A more self-consciously and proudly more inclusive reading group also emboldens our members to bring their authentic, disabled, ill, and neurodiverse selves into the discussion at our meetings, knowing that we are not just welcoming of difference, but explicitly value difference. In the neoliberal higher education institution, which is incredibly uncaring and hostile to disabled students and staff alike, it is important to us that Reading Feminism be a safe space where non-typical reading practices are celebrated, not denigrated. In this sense, cripping reading does more than just open access to understanding the text, but is a tool of resistance and resilience. Twomey describes how traditional literacy is clearly linked to one's educational and professional upward mobility. And so we frame cripping reading as an act of solidarity to combat the multiple and intersecting oppressions within higher education, by recognizing knowledge production is a communal effort. If one of our members comes up against barriers of any kind in engaging with and reading around the text, we're committed to finding ways around and ways through those barriers, to doing an expansive kind of feminism that brings people in instead of cutting them out.
It is here that making emerged as a potential way to enfold us and our readings together differently, in an embodied, communal and non-prescriptive way that resists dominant, ableist and patriarchal modes of constructing reading and thinking as abstracted and linear. By making from reading, we could bring our daily lives into our feminist reading. We could include fragments of living, our marginalia, our scribbled notes, images and art and objects and pets that we read alongside. And so, after 2 years of learning from, with and alongside each other, we also wanted to begin to create a kind of archive of our feminist becomings that was informed by what we might call an ethics of reading around the text. Inspired in part by the work of Alex Martinez-Rowe and her exhibition To Become Two, and the Matrix Collective's collectively written book Making Space, we became keenly aware of the generative possibilities bound to collective making. If we make, we materialise our network. We have things to share, change, critique, preserve, and to use to speculate differently. Our feminist reading and thinking led us to an object that has been used by many feminists in many places, the zine, a handmade DIY document usually circulated through word of mouth and often made by many moving feminist hands.
The zine's important feminist resonance and political productiveness has been said by some to come from the third space that zines inhabit. Adelaide Lincona writes about feminist zines as existing in this feminist third space, both and consciousness, a space apart, betwixt and between academic disciplines, scholarship, and popular media. In this othered space, feminist zines hold space for the critical investigation of feminist ideas, praxis, and resistance. These subversive hodgepodge texts can exist outside of the traditional and often stifling print media industry. Zines are wholly directed by the autonomy of the creators, unfettered by dominant representations of the gendered, sexualized, and racialized body, only where these assumptions are not internalized. Instead, these prevailing stereotypes are often subverted and critiqued using the very same images that reiterate them in the first place. Zines' power also rests in their ability to speak to and with ambiguity and contradiction. The collaborative nature of many zines, including ours, allows for the inclusion of multiple voices, perspectives, and gazes to be embodied in the same publication. As Lincona writes, zines can be irreverent, parodic, utopian, and rhetorical performances. Zines can aim to do things, but they can also just exist in all their creative, entangled, diffractive, and sometimes ephemeral messiness. Perhaps the power of the zine rests in its possibilities, that it can be archived, but it can also be thrown away, burnt, lost, ruined. More so, maybe the potentialities of the zine also take root in it being a reflection of the now. Made with what is at hand, it is created in a moment, and although created using stuff from any point in time, it is made for now, and maybe only for now. Tomorrow it might be gone, but then again, it also might exist in 35 years. No one knows. Because, unlike other forms of literature or media, zines are not usually officially catalogued. The third space that allows zines to be apart from so much stiffness and bureaucracy also, somewhat beautifully, signals their often impermanence. Zines hold space and a place for differing, contradicting, conversational feminist subjectivities. The physical and literal cut and paste of zine making is volatile and unsettled. It's messy, gluey, sticky, it leaves residues and clippings behind. And perhaps it is in those residues, both literal and figurative, which is truly the thing that zines do. They leave behind something, whether memory or magazine, that sits with those that were part of the making or reading or archiving.
Turning to zines felt a bit like returning to a feminist home. Here we sat, together, the sharp violence of scissors, the gooey stickiness of glue. We cut National Geographics, slicing through the white supremacist, patriarchal, heterosexist worlds of its pages, and rearranged its pieces, sat them beside our feminist notes, our feminist marginalias, fragments of feminist work that have brought us together and guided us through the hostile and careless neoliberal university and workforce. And as we sat together, cutting, arranging, sticking, talking in zigzags across the table, We were doing something that feminists have done for a long time in a lot of ways, in a lot of places. We were making something for those who precede us, succeed us, and exceed us. We were making things for ourselves, but also, significantly, for each other. Our zine making was sticky in the sense that Sarah Ahmed described stickiness as something that involves a form of relationality or a withness in which the elements that are with get bound together. We stuck together fragments of our sticky feminist network, layered our emotions and relations and notes diffractively, produced an incomplete arrangement of things and materials that we can now use to visualise our feminist collective. Our sticky emotions have been archived now. Our slow zine-making night and our months of reading and speaking and hearing have congealed in our zine, a zine made by our many hands.
So this is my dog Remy, and he is the inspiration for my page. It's actually his hair that's on the lady's dress. When I think of home, I think of Remy because being with him feels so easy, and I think that what I've come to know is that being in feminist spaces is very much the same sort of thing. Home and feminist spaces are like being wrapped in Remy's beautiful woolly coat.
Hello, my name is Cindy, and just talking about design, I thought it was a really unique and fun thing to do, especially with a group of people, because I've never done anything like that before. And I think one thing that I liked about design was the collage aspect of it, because usually when I want to create creative works, I always get this pressure to create something completely new and original, and to like avoid plagiarizing like other people and artists and stuff. But because of design and like the collage aspect of it, it really forced me to look at other people's perspective and the materials, and to use their own words to try to express what I wanted to express, which was in this case a feeling of sisterhood and like collaborative work. It helped me push past my creative block and like my perfectionism, and just focus on the creating aspect of design, which I really thought was like fun.
Most importantly for me, it's really given me the why of my work in the arts or wherever I'll end up professionally, because I've now experienced a space and I just how meaningful it was to me. I want to be creating these kinds of spaces somehow and contributing towards them. And then I think also I just have a much more complex understanding of all the adjacent causes. You know, I can recognize ableism and racism, and you really hear about your friends' experiences with those. And with Reading Feminism, I feel like we make space for it, where you can see the intersections, where we have space for them, we can work with them. So that's been a very rewarding takeaway.
Our reading group destabilizes disciplinary boundaries, challenges the inaccessibility of academia, and supports its members in their feminist epistemic becomings. Reading, of course, is not simply the work of looking at a word and making sense of it. It is not invisible, private labor. It is the work of reflecting, thinking, hurting, healing, researching, discussing, creating, bonding, fighting, loving, familiarizing ourselves with feminism and each other, closely, intimately, and personally. Reading Feminism helps us to know as a collective and reminds us that the political is personal and the personal is political.